Well, happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Sermon Scraps. We were in First Timothy chapter 4, verses 6 through 16 yesterday, and we looked at what I would say is Paul's emphasis on a word-centered, a word-based ministry. I was running late, or the service was running late yesterday. I actually didn't go over that much, but we were running out of time. So there were a few things I started just cutting as I was going through the sermon. So I wanted to pick up on a couple of those pieces in today's edition of Sermon Scraps. And it's mostly towards the end because I got through all of what I wanted to for the first half of these. But verse 11 is where there's this hinge point, I think, in the text. He says, command and teach these things. Don't let anyone look down on you because of your youth. And he goes on, verse 14, don't neglect the gift that is in you. It was given to you through prophecy with a laying on of hands by the council of elders. And I want to just talk a little bit more about this internal and external call that are required for pastors to faithfully serve. Because part of what the church is supposed to do is actually come alongside and help someone affirming and validating the internal call that people have. Like most seminaries that I'm aware of actually ask for a letter of recommendation from a pastor slash church. And I think that should be taken seriously instead of just giving people a blank check to say, well, yeah, if you're called, then go nuts for it. And we'll encourage whatever you want to do. And honestly, like I went to seminary with people that I would never go to any of the churches that their pastors at. Like they had no business pursuing being pastors. One of the like most alarming things to me actually when I started seminary is I met one guy who said he'd never read through the entire Bible before. Like that just blew me away because I was like, how can you have this like internal call or desire to pursue something and teach something that you don't even know what it actually says? Now, that's a seminary piece, but I would argue that the best place to train pastors is in the local church. I just think that that's necessary. Like the church is not going to go away. Seminaries will come and go. Seminaries are supposed to actually, I think, be an extension of the church. That's what seminaries were generally started as places for churches to communally together to train up pastors and then call them back to their churches. I've heard one seminary president say, don't send or encourage someone to go to seminary that you wouldn't bring back and be willing to hire as your pastor. And like it's been interesting to me getting into ministry because I remember when I was growing up, anytime I feel like you go to like youth conferences or something, someone would bring up like maybe you are being called to pursue be a pastor or to be a missionary or giving your life to full-time vocational ministry. And I feel like there's this switch that took place where as soon as I got into ministry and I began in ministry in 2011, I feel like we stopped doing that. And what it has led to is actually the significant decline and drop in people who are feeling a burden and a call to pursue ministry. And as I've been like reflecting on this and talking with some of my pastor friends about it, one of the things that has stood out to me is I think over the past probably 8 to 10 years, what has been emphasized in ministry is not the joy that comes from it, but the difficulties. And I think it's really left a sour taste in people's mouths about the joy and privileges that come from being and pursuing being a local church pastor. Because if all people hear about it as well, during COVID, people complained about it. During the riots, people complained about me. During this thing, people complained about me. And like, yeah, there are difficult and heavy things about it, but that's true of any job, honestly. I don't think now that I mean there is something unique about this. I was thinking about this over the summer while I was on sabbatical. Like it's hard to be away from a church, your church, for an extended period of time like that. Like there's relationships that continue that our family missed out on. There's connections that are not deepened. It's taken 3 months since coming back to actually feel like we're caught up and re-engaged with where we were before we took off for sabbatical. It is kind of weird. Um, and so like that's part of the reality is I think we as a church need to be looking for ways that we can bring and train other future pastors up and then continue sending them out because we want other churches to flourish as well. And we need to talk about not just the like difficulties of ministry, which there are. We also need to talk about the joys. Like I've had the privilege of being a front row participant and seeing some of the ways God has transformed and moved in people's lives. Like no one else gets to see some of those things. It's an incredibly sacred and honoring thing to be a part of that. But there's a second thing to this as well, and that's something that can be stretching for us as a church. And that is the reality that we need to be okay with some bad sermons because the only way to grow in becoming a pastor, a particularly preacher, is to do it, which means some of the beginning ones are not going to be very good. So it can be at times difficult to encourage people who are just starting out, trying and experiencing some of these things. And we as a church need to be okay providing spaces for people to not do perfectly at them. Like I remember when I was growing up, one of the first ways I was able to start serving in a church is playing bass guitar. I was not good. I was probably 14 or 15 years old, but the church didn't have another bass guitarist, so they gave me an opportunity to come in and play on Sundays. And I'm sure I was a distraction in many places. I'm sure I wasn't the most helpful musician in there, but they gave me an opportunity to serve, and that was like my first exposure to actively using my gifts and being able to serve in the local church. And like there's this tension where we do want excellence. We want to do it to the best of our abilities, but not so like setting the bar so high that we can't have multiple generations and multiple skill levels involved in using their gifts for the good of the church. So that's this internal and external call. There needs to be both of these in order for pastors to pursue ministry. But the second thing I just want to comment on is verse 15 says, practice these things, be committed to them so that your progress may be evident to all. There should be growth that is taking place in church leaders' lives. It was interesting because a couple years ago, for like I just shared that my candidating process, everyone brought up the verse 12, don't let anyone despise your youth, but set an example piece. Um, and someone commented to me just a couple years ago that when I was hired here in 2020, previously what this church had only hired was Paul's. In bringing me, they hired a Timothy, which means there needs to be room for growth for me. And for me, it has been stretching and challenging. And I hope that you guys have seen growth in preaching and leadership and love and care and concern for us as a church. But it's not just me. Micah's been growing and challenged. I've seen Tammy and Heather and Aaron and Molly. Like there's been growth among the staff and the elders that we have here over the past number of years. And I'm looking forward to seeing what God continues doing, the way he continues blessing and maturing and helping us continue pursuing holiness together as a church. So those are just some brief thoughts I didn't have time to talk about in my sermon yesterday. We'll be in First Timothy chapter 5 this next week. We're going to be looking more at like the family, the church as a family, and some of the specific ways that these familial roles and relationships are supposed to look in the local church. Hope you guys had fun at the Fall Fest this week. My kids loved it. Said it was the best Fall Fest we've ever done. So better, I guess, was better than last year's. This is all that means. And don't forget, coming up, we have on November 2nd, so this coming Sunday, time change. Aaron is doing a family Bible class. And then starting November 9th, we're doing a class titled Strands of Unity, looking at how we as a church can continue preserving the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. So would love to have you join us for that. Again, if you got questions about anything that we're talking through, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee. I'm praying that the Lord blesses you this week, and I look forward to seeing you again on Sunday morning.